We're back on a Monday.
On a Monday.
And on Mondays, we talk about the 48 laws of power.
Correct.
This Monday, we're going to talk about Law 29. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And Law 29 says, plan all the way to the end. The ending is everything. Plan all the way to it, taking into account all the possible consequences, obstacles, and twists of fortune that might reverse your hard work and give the glory to others. By planning to the end, you will not be overwhelmed by the circumstances, and you will know when to stop. Gently guide fortune and help determine the future by thinking far ahead. So Law 29, plan all the way to the end. I really enjoyed this law, and in preparation, I was thinking when this happened to me, where by not planning all the way to the end, I got hurt, or things didn't go necessarily as planned. And there was one thing recently, because Robert Greene says when you wing it, essentially, when you try to be was it spontaneous, I think is the word he uses, and your plan is vague, you're not prepared for and so you just have to improvise, and improvisation is very bad according to him in this law. So when I was about 21, a mentor told me, hey, write down a list of goals, and one of them was to purchase a property in a specific city. And ever since 21, I've had that goal in mind. But I never was specific on that goal. What did I mean by buying a property there? Was it going to be, an investment property? Was it going to be to live in? Was it going to be units? Was it going to, right? And last year, I bought a property in that city with a partner. But I wanted that so bad. My plan was to have that property in that city so bad that I didn't plan and look at all the potential outcomes that could have happened. The city was very much different last year when I bought in that city than it was when I first set that goal. And in the process, I think I was blinded somewhat by just, I need to buy in that city. That was my goal from 21 years old. And and as you know, I bought in that city with a partner, and we got hurt because the city had passed rent control laws that really affected the investment. It was multiple units, and we got hurt in the long run. So just to move on, I just want to say I was blinded. And Robert Greene talks about the conquistador who was so blinded about finding El Dorado. What was his name? Balboa. He was so blinded by finding this, discovering the city of El Dorado, that he allowed certain things to happen, and we can touch on that. But that blindness, last year I went through it, and so I think that we need to lay out every possible outcome, like the game of chess. What's going to happen if I do this, I do that, and revisit that plan over and over. Just because you planned it some time ago doesn't mean, and we have to be specific. So anyways, that was something, and we ended up getting hurt in that process. I mean, we made out okay, but it wasn't a good decision at the end of the day. There were unforeseen circumstances. But that happened recently, and like we talk about some of these laws, we encounter them. And so I think that's what really, getting hurt is where it really makes a difference. You will remember. And that was, we got hurt on that one. So
very interesting.
How about you? Have you come across this law in your life or seen it play out?
Well, there's so much I want to say. This law hit me like a ton of bricks because I'm interpreting this law now that I'm in my 60s, much different than the first time I read it. I've gotten into several businesses throughout my life, and I'm here to tell you that you can't foresee every single occurrence that's going to come down the road, because you're going to get hit from places you never even knew existed. But Robert Greene is an exceptional writer, and what he's saying is, look, this is a think ahead type of law, a tactical type of law, a foresight type of law, okay? So he's saying plan it out as best as you can from beginning to end, okay? I'm here to tell you that you're going to plan out a course, and if you're not ready to make some adjustments and be a little bit flexible to get to the end goal that you want, okay, it's going to be difficult.
Absolutely.
Because it's almost, and what do I know about anything, right? Robert Greene is the author. He's the authority. But I'm here to tell you that it's very difficult to plan out every aspect of your road. Like, for example, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So that our viewers know. How long did it take you to buy that property from the moment you identified the fact that you wanted to buy one? Was it months? Was it years?
Yeah, it was over a year.
It was over a year.
It was over a year of negotiations and following up.
No, what I mean is you had a dream to buy a property in this city.
Yes, I wrote that down when I was 21 years old, and I bought it when I was 32. So 11 years.
It took you 11 years. So what took you so long? I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, but why not, right? That's what...
Yeah.
So what took you so long?
My
11 years to buy a property.
Yeah.
Some people would say you didn't really want to buy it. So what took you so long?
Yeah, I would agree with them. I had other priorities. I had many things on this list, and one of them was to buy a property, but other things were like travel to specific Puerto Rico and Spain, and I had those things on my list of goals, and I was able to knock them out. But
you also had your own business,
and I also had my own business, so there were other priorities, and that's why, yeah, because I could have done it a long time ago, but I don't think Robert Greene is saying don't adapt in that process and don't be so rigid. What I think he's saying is try and look at every possible outcome. And I agree with you when you say there's no way. You cannot possibly. But the exercise of trying to look at every possible outcome. But a chess player would argue with you and say, well, I can look at, like a professional grandmaster chess player would probably say, oh, I know every possible move you can make. So within the scope of the games that we play, which life to a certain extent is a game, you have rules. If you're going to play basketball, you use your hands. If you're going to play soccer, you use your feet. If you're going to invest in real estate, this is how you do it. Whatever your goal is. If you're going to open a business. But there are unforeseen things, like people can get sick. There are laws that change. There are things like that. So yeah, I would say that you have to adapt. But I was listening to David Blaine the other day talk about how when magic has completely changed, and it pertains to this. When you used to do a card trick, you were performing for a few people in front of you, and sleight of hand is what magicians do. Well, now you have cell phones. He says that the eye will not be able to capture what he's doing, but the people recording from all the different angles have completely changed magic, because they can go back and look at that recording and now they see your trick.
Wow.
So he says you have to basically plan for that now. Your whatever sleight of hand you do has to be taken into account. You will be recorded from every single angle, they're going to study it, and they're going to try and find your trick. So it has to be so good, not even a phone can capture it.
Wow.
Because the eye, he said, is very easy to deceive. Because we don't actually see things. He says that the eye, he talked about it looks at an image, then the brain processes what that image actually is.
You remind me of two things. Number one is, we have a dear friend, her name is Marta, and she says you have to be intentional.
Yes.
About what you do. And we need to get back to her. Today. Because we've gotten so busy with our business. Thank God. And
the
so
podcast.
But the real estate is just incredible how, thank God. But she says you have to be intentional.
Right.
And ever since we did the podcast with her, that word comes up over and over again. So my question would be how intentional you were in purchasing this property in this particular city if it took you 11 years. You had other priorities.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean...
But you could be blinded, and that's why I think it's good to plan and look at all the potential obstacles.
Right. He says, we usually rule by emotion when you should be... reasoning things out. And he says that Balboa, he was actually beheaded.
Right.
Okay. They cut his head off.
Yep.
And it's because he was reacting in very much an emotional manner instead of, being tactful and figuring out a strategic, tactical way.
Correct.
So, they cut his head off.
And so the story of Vasco Núñez de Balboa, nobody knows his name because he was so blinded about finding El Dorado that other people like Pizarro, who we know
and people and things that was happening around him, he was blinded to the fact that there were other things that should have taken priority because he wasn't going to reach his goal, but he was, like you say, blinded by the emotions.
I forgot what he said, something with the heart instead of with the mind, something like that.
Yeah, you think with your heart instead of with your...
Right. And so, I think that it's good to plan things out. I mean, even when you talk about doing like a T-chart, that's a way of looking at all the potentials.
Well, I always do that.
Yeah.
Because I needed a system. Because in the beginning, there was... right now you have the internet and you have all these people that are talking about how to do this, how to do that, and whatever. So you could essentially get on YouTube and figure anything out, okay? But that wasn't available before. We had libraries, and there were books that were being written, and I did go to the libraries quite a bit and pull out books. To some of the young people, this is like, I'm from the age of the dinosaurs, Yeah. But I would go pick out a book on business development or whatever, and there were speakers that were brought in by the company that I worked for and so forth. So you try to grab things here and there and put your own puzzle together and go down your path, But one of the things that was alluded to this law was that if you're listening to the laws of power, and we have to remember that these are power moves, okay?
Right.
You have some type of a hunger, okay? They're relating it, like you either have a hunger for knowledge or a hunger for wealth or a hunger for happiness, but essentially, a hunger to improve your life.
Yes, burning desire to do something.
Burning desire to do something.
Yeah.
To improve your life. And so they're saying, plan from the beginning to the end, and that will keep you focused on your goal. And it's a tremendous law. It reminds me, they gave an analogy of a stone cutter. Some of these stone cutters are, banging away with a hammer at a rock, and hitting it for 1,000 times. And, that rock shows no damage whatsoever. And then on the 1001 hit with that hammer, then a crack appears. But you had to hit it 1,000 times before and let that vibration go through the rock and whatever it is that was doing to the rock. But there's no apparent damage. Okay? So if you don't plan till the end, they say most stonecutters would give up. But if you plan to the end, you persevere, you keep hitting it. On the 1001 hit, the first crack appears. And then that's a weakness. And you keep hitting it, and then all of a sudden, that rock, no matter how big it is, it falls apart. And there's your goal.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really cool, that they compared it to that. But it's tremendous.
Yeah, I definitely think that many times we're very vague, and many times we're not looking at the whole picture and all the potential possibilities, especially like Robert Greene says, we're emotional. And you were even saying this morning, something happened this morning. You said, I'm going to take a stoic approach to this. And you can't control what happens. You can control how you react to it. And I think that applies here as well.
It sure does. They were saying, when you plan all the way to the end, the emotions won't interfere with your path to reach your goal. Because you, to a certain extent, have a roadmap.
Right.
And if something comes out of nowhere, you still had planned to the end, so you kind of have a roadmap.
Right. So
something hits you, okay, well, you deal with this, but you continue on your roadmap to your goal.
Yeah.
And it's very important.
Yeah, you stick to the script. It's interesting because I have always thought improvisation is a good thing.
Yeah.
I always thought, hey, if you're able to be on your toes and improvise in a certain situation, things don't go as planned, all that. And I think to a certain extent it is good, but not...
He says it's a temporary fix.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a weaker position when you're improvising as opposed to you have a plan in mind and you're just sticking to it. It's interesting how in the law, Robert Greene says, gently guide fortune and help determine the future by thinking far ahead. Because he says that if there are twists of fortune that will reverse your hard work and give glory to others, you have to be aware of that. Because, going back to Balboa, the conquistador, he didn't plan out that other people would get wind of his discovery of El Dorado, or the potential discovery, and just get rid of him and kill him,
right,
and take the credit themselves. So you have to, if you have an idea, you don't necessarily have to share that idea, right? You might have to keep that idea to yourself until it's developed to a point where you can protect it.
That's one of the laws. Say less than necessary. It's one of the first ones, like number 3 or number 4. Say less than necessary.
Conceal your intentions.
Conceal your intentions. In fact, I think that's law 3. Conceal your intentions. And, in the course of my life, I know people that purposely do not share what they're trying to do until they do it.
Till it's done.
And then they share the path. In fact, I know some people that do it because they think they have this fear that they're going to get jinxed.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Superstitious.
Sure. They say, it's not so much the applying law number 3, which is say less than necessary, conceal your intentions. You definitely, there's some people, there's a strategy behind that too.
Yeah.
Because for example, there was one time when I was buying an agency, and I landed the ability to purchase this agency just by complimenting the gentleman's watch. Okay? I said, hey, that's a beautiful watch. And that's how it all got started. You have a beautiful watch. And he said, yeah, thank you. I actually got this from my father. And I said, well, that's super cool. I have one from my dad too. You know, it's the emotional value of it is far greater than the economic value. You know, it's not a big deal watch kind of thing. But because I said you have a beautiful watch, that started a conversation. And a year and a half later, I bought that agency. Had I shared, because nobody knew that this gentleman had any inkling whatsoever of selling. Had I shared with some of my friends, hey, you know what, I'm looking into this guy, blah, 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 it would have been derailed. Because I was the least likely candidate.
Oh, you think they would have taken the glory in that case?
They would have approached him. No doubt about it. They would have approached him, and it would have created an issue. So I made it a point not to share with anybody. And whatever I did, in fact, I remember, I was thinking, there's a book out right now. It says, I think Patrick wrote it, only the neurotics succeed or something like that. We need to check the name of the title.
Only the paranoid survive.
Only the paranoid survive. Okay?
That just came to mind, but I don't know the book.
I think it's Only the Paranoid Survive. I remember setting up a breakfast meeting with this gentleman. And because he was coming from abroad, I wouldn't set up the breakfast in the city where the agency was found. I would purposely set up, the breakfast in another city.
Yeah, you were being strategic.
I thought I was being paranoid. I remember thinking something's wrong with me. Geez. But look, you could meet people by coincidence. Look at what happened this morning where this couple goes to, what was it, Wood Ranch? And then the other couple was there sitting right next to their booth.
Yeah, I think, there's chance. And that's where he said.
Well, is it chance or is it, we did a podcast on this. What's it called when you think of someone and that person calls on the phone? Synchronicity.
But
look into that, folks. Synchronicity.
But here in the law, he's saying fortune.
Oh.
Like Machiavelli talks about fortuna or misfortune. But Machiavelli says that fortune, is something that you have to account for. Like there are people that, like in terms of power, have fortune, luck. So you could debate that for hours. Is it, luck? Is it hard work? Is it contacts? But these guys argue that there's fortune. Even Robert Greene here is saying gently guide fortune.
Yeah, some people are lucky.
So you have the luck, but you're also guiding it to determine the future by thinking far ahead. But fortune is part of... See, he's even saying something that would be seen as luck. He's even saying to account that into your plans, I guess. That's the way I'm reading it. Because he's saying you have twists of fortune. You have to take those into account. That could reverse your hard work. Plan to the end so you will not be overwhelmed by the circumstances. You'll know when to stop. That's super important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When to stop being on the offensive. When do you stop attacking?
And that's another law where you could be spread too thin. Concentrate your forces.
Yeah.
Concentrate your forces because you have to know when to stop and regain. Right? And there's even the law of the surrender tactic. So all of these things, you could say in like warfare, you can apply, but in life.
Well, if you're in a corporate structure, if you're in a family structure, yeah, it can be applied all over the place, really.
But I think it's a good, what would you say, like not procedure, but it's a good process to do. Is just like the game of chess. You know, if you play chess, you know, hey, if I move my queen here or king here, I could be attacked by this angle, this angle, this angle. And sometimes you don't see all the angles, and that's where you get caught. But that process of, in your head, you have to think, oh, my opponent could do this, these moves.
Right.
That is a good process to have. And when you have a goal in mind and a dream, not getting blinded by the end, but actually thinking, hey, this is my goal, this is my end, but all of these things can happen along the way.
Well, you know, he says, plan to the end. Does the law say the end is everything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the end is everything.
So it's very specific in that regard.
That's the first piece of it.
Plan to the end.
The ending is everything.
Is everything.
Yeah. If you don't get to your goal, if you don't discover what you were going to discover, invent what you were going to invent, achieve your goal, no one's going to know about you.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
In terms of power.
Right. Well, I mean, look, there was another time when there was another business available, and there were 3 people bidding for it. In the field that we were in, they only remember who bought it.
Yes. No one knows second place.
They don't remember who was bidding for it in second or third place or fourth, you know?
Yeah.
I remember there was a business in Arcadia, and I wanted it really bad.
Yeah.
And I was going up against a Mohibeth. These people were huge. But I had an ace in the hole. But I still lost. But I've come across other people since that know that this business was bought, and they know who bought it.
Sure.
They never knew that I was bidding for it.
No.
Or anything like that, and that I got destroyed in the process.
Yeah, I mean, I've even heard you say before, like, oh, I almost bought that building. You know, oh, I had an offer on that. And it's like, well, no one, who's the owner of it now?
Almost ain't good enough.
It's nobody knows, nobody remembers second place. That's what I used to. And that's one thing that we hear a lot about, these participation trophies with kids, but even in an organization, adults, it's not only kids. You know, a sales organization, you get rewarded based on the production, the merit, you know, how many sales you did.
Yeah.
There's not like, hey, you had a minimum, because you hit a minimum, everybody gets.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the guys who get the trips
to Cancun is the one in the first place.
I mean, we worked for a company that would reward the top producing agents, the top producing, right, specialists.
Yeah, with trips and
so
forth.
With trips and, you know, money and different bonuses and different things for the top performers.
Right. Just because everybody was in it, you know, not everybody's going to win the trip to Cancun.
Right.
Oh, just because you were participating. And don't worry about your sales were mediocre, but we're still going to give you the trip. What does that do for the one that took the first place?
So that's why...
Where are you sending him or her?
To take it to the law is the ending is everything.
Right.
You are as good in a sales organization as your production. You're as good as the sales you made that year, because you are forgotten the next year if you don't have any sales. You know, I remember there was a very top producing specialist that was going through some health, you know, and I remember calling him because I thought, you know, everybody looks at the numbers, especially when you're at a high competitive, you know, I always wanted to know, what was this guy doing? What was that? And I would call them, and I called the number one guy in the company, in a national company, and I asked him, you know, can you give me one of the things he told me, which I thought was extremely important, because I said, I'm just getting started. Can you give me? He says, I only spend my time on things that pay me.
Wow. Look how simple that is, but that's amazing.
I only spend time on the things that pay me. And he was the number one guy in the
That's
company.
huge.
But going back to this other gentleman that I called, because I noticed his numbers in production were dropping, and he had gone through an injury, some sort of, he was an active guy, and he went through an injury, and so he was in crutches and this and that. He's like, can you imagine, Mike, I'm going to an appointment to sell financial products, investments, life insurance, and I'm in crutches showing up. How good does that look to sell life insurance? You're falling apart, So anyways, his sales suffered.
Right. Or you're doing financial assets and you're falling apart. They'll probably think
this guy's
you're
not
going to be around.
That was something I used to tell people. Anyways, I'm getting a little sidetracked.
And we're joking, but I'll tell you what. One business that I looked at.
Yeah.
Okay. The demographics of that agency were much, much older folks.
That's interesting.
And it played a big role in the guys that were bidding for that insurance agency.
Right.
The demographics of that agency, the gentleman had been around for a long time, and he was way up there in age, but so were his clients.
And so, for those that aren't familiar, if your clients are older, and you're buying this business, if this is an existing business and the clients are older, and you're trying to buy this business, you have to factor in how many more years are they going to be a customer, because eventually people pass away. And so you actually factor that in, that, hey, the ages of the clients are in their 70s and 80s. How much longer will they be a client to that business, whatever that business is?
In one of our podcasts, you said that, because I'm way older than you, and I've been involved in
almost double my age.
I double your age, and
well, no, not anymore. I'm 33.
Oh well, I'm gonna double your age in a couple months.
Soon.
All right. So I've been involved in business for a long time. So you were giving a lot of credit to experience. And I'm trying to motivate the young folk and telling them, look, experience counts for something, but don't think it counts for all that much. Okay?
Correct.
All right? Because I'm a big proponent of pulling the trigger. Just get it done. Do your T-chart. And I respect Robert Greene tremendously. Okay? Plan as much as you can to the end. Okay? I lost my thought because what's going on behind you.
You're saying plan to the end, but the only way to really learn is to dive in and actually jump in.
Right, because look, experience. Okay, so in that particular agency where people were much, much older, that turned off a lot of people. Okay? Because it is somewhat of a negative. But there are ways to offset that once you're in. Okay? But nobody was thinking about that. And I'll tell you what, neither was I. I'm not this guru that knows it, nothing like that. It turned me off also. But now that I have been in business so long and I have seen so many other things, there would have been a way to offset that. But once you're in, so experience is good up to a certain point, because the other factors, sometimes you got to just dive in. Yeah, what is that thing? Paralysis by analysis.
Yeah,
you can't analyze things way too much.
Yeah, and the other side to things is like, what about the young entrepreneur, or you don't have to even be young. You could be somebody who's new to a business. You don't have any experience, but what you have is a burning desire, and you will figure out a way to get there, and people will sense, hey, this person has a desire to do well. And if you know your product, whatever it is, you know what you're doing, you could do well. So I don't think experience is everything, because there could be an old guy who's got 100 years of experience but has no desire. I don't want to do business with that person necessarily.
Correct.
So,
And that's one of the Stoic laws too. They're saying, look, it's good to help humanity. It's good to help people. But one of the peoples that you should never help, or that's what the Stoics say, you know, it's your help is going to go by the wayside anyway, so why waste your time? Is people that don't have the willingness to change, to do an introspection and look at themselves and say, hey, you know what, I think I need to tweak this a little bit. Because nobody's perfect.
Sure.
That wabi-sabi kind of Japanese kind of thing, you know? So there's nothing perfect. But if you're not willing to look introspectively and try to, you know, analyze the situation and say, you know, I need improvement. We all need improvement.
Yeah, you got to meet me halfway.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going to help each other, if I'm going to help you, you have to do some of your part.
Yeah.
So, beautiful. I think...
next time you sit here, because you got two Blue Jays fighting it out back there. Distracted me, you know. So you sit here and I'll sit there.
Well, the end is everything, so we'll see the outcome of this show.
Okay.
But thank you for sharing. And then for those listening, we've now done up to Law 29.
Yeah.
So we got all of them in the description, and we're going to keep going.
And we never usually say this, but, you know, we're growing. And if you like the content, share it with friends and family. And if they can subscribe, that'd be great, you know, because we're looking to get to 1,000 subscribers soon, God willing.
But before the end of the year.
Before the end of the year.
That's the goal.
All right.
We got about 495 left or so. All right. Thank you.